I used to work at a local outdoor supply store. Every year, like most stores, we get very busy around the holidays. So, the last couple of months of every year used to be very busy, and that year, in 2016, I was working with 2 other employees on a shift near the end of December. We were meant to do the closing shift that night after the busiest month of the year. The owner had hired an extra employee at the end of the year to get extra efficiency in the work. But something about the guy named Alan was spooky, and it had always disturbed every one of us working there with him. He only agreed to work night shifts, and that night it was my first time working alongside him. He used to work pretty fine, but he never talked much. We always thought that as long as he did his job, we really shouldn't bother him. But we had no idea that his weirdness would grow and turn into something sinister, which would leave us all in shock. That day was the busiest of all, and obviously, we needed everybody who worked at the store to be working hard that day. Even the closing shift was so busy that we didn't have enough time to eat. We didn't have many customers like the morning shift had, but still, we got quite a lot of customers that night. The first hours went by very quickly because of how busy we all were. All 3 of us working there intended to end our shift at 4 a.m., but one of us got so tired that he left early at about 1 a.m. Now I was left alone with Alan. The store started to get empty, and at 2 it was just me and Alan working there, setting shelves to end the night. All of a sudden I noticed that Alan was not anywhere in the store. I thought he might have left as well. So now I was working alone during the quietest and darkest hour of the night. But that was not much of a problem, as I just wanted to end my work and leave. I needed to go to the back room of the store to get some items to place on empty shelves. Our back room was actually on the left of the store, and I walked over to it and went inside. As soon as I got inside, I heard movements coming from the corner of it, as if somebody else was in there. I had just seen most of my workers, so I didn't think any of them would be in there. But I knew that everyone had already left, and I was working alone there. It was fairly dark, and I walked a little bit farther from where the noise was coming from. Then I saw a shadow of someone sitting in that corner. I yelled at him that whoever it is, I will call the police. But he didn't move, so I picked something up for defense and got closer. As I got just behind that person, he swiftly turned towards me, and to my surprise, it was Alan. He didn't look normal. He started shouting and yelling at me to go out as if I had disturbed his privacy. I got scared, and I didn't know how to respond, so I thought of leaving. As I was about to leave, I heard someone coming into the store from the back door. It was fairly dark in that area, and I walked a little bit farther to where the noise was coming from. Then I saw 4 large men, all dressed in black long dresses, as well as masks on their faces. They had the back door leading out to the dumpster behind the store open. As soon as they saw me, one of them yelled at me not to move. I was probably about 10 feet away from them, and I didn't know if I would be able to outrun them. Before I could think about what to do, one of them walked over quickly to me, put his hand on my arm, and held me there. He was a strange-looking person and was standing just behind me now. All of a sudden, the door of the back room banged open, and Alan got out of the room with a few bags in his hands. I thought of them to be filled with money or something. I was stunned at what I had just seen. At that point, I got hit by something at the back of my head, and I fell on the floor. The morning shift employee came and picked me up. We got to know that the store had been robbed, and Alan was never found after that incident. None of the men have ever been caught. I still couldn't figure out what Alan was doing alone in that dark room, and who it was that came that night into the store. I used to work as a cleaner at a large office building. It was a night shift job, and I was usually the only one there. The building was mostly empty, but there were always a few people who worked late. One night, I was doing my cleaning when I heard a noise coming from one of the floors. I thought there might be someone working the night shift as well, or someone doing overtime in the office. So for the first time, I ignored it, but then again, while working, I heard the same noise from the same floor. As I got to that floor, it was empty and dark, with only a few lights in the corridor opened. As I stood there trying to figure out what happened, I heard the noise again, and this time I could tell from which room it was coming. I got scared and hesitant to see, but anyhow, I went to investigate and found the door of that room was slightly opened. I peered inside and saw a man standing in the shadows. "Hello," I called out. The man didn't answer. He just stood there, staring at me. I took a step inside the room. "Are you supposed to be here?" I asked. The man still didn't answer. He just took a step towards me. I backed away. "I'm calling the police," I said. I turned and ran down the hallway. I could hear the man running after me. I ran as fast as I could, but he was gaining on me. I reached the stairwell and started running down the stairs. I could hear the man right behind me. I was so scared that I could barely breathe. I reached the bottom of the stairs and burst out the front door. I ran to my car and jumped in. I locked the doors and started the engine. The man came running out of the building. He saw me in my car and started yelling. He was banging on the windows and trying to open the doors. I sped away from the building, leaving the man behind. I called the police and told them what had happened. They said they would send a car to investigate. I drove home, still shaking from fear. I couldn't believe that someone had tried to attack me. I was just doing my job. The next day, I went back to work. The police had investigated the night before, but they hadn't found any sign of the man. They said that he must have gotten away. I was still scared, but I knew that I couldn't let fear control me. I had to keep doing my job. A few weeks later, I was working another night shift. This time, I was almost done cleaning and heard a noise coming from the same floor where the man had attacked me before. I froze. My heart was pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath and started walking towards the noise. I slowly opened the door to the room, switched the lights on, and peered inside. The room was empty. I let out a sigh of relief. It must have just been my imagination. I turned to leave, but then I saw something out of the corner of my eye. There was a shadow moving in the corner of the room. I swung around, but there was nothing there. I took a step into the room. "Is anyone there?" I called out. My voice echoed back to me from the empty room. I was starting to feel scared. I turned to leave again, but then I saw something move out of the corner of my eye again. This time, I was ready for it. I turned and saw the man standing in the shadows. He was smiling at me. I couldn't figure out what I should do. I got terrified, and the man started to walk towards me in his wicked demeanor. He stepped closer, and I screamed for help. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. I tried to pick up my flashlight, but before I could, the man grabbed me from my neck. I started screaming and tried to break free. The man whispered in my ear, "You can't escape." Finally, with all my power, I pushed him and he fell. Then I ran towards the exit and brought some other people along to figure out the situation. But as I returned, he was gone. Nowhere to be seen ever again. CCTV footage didn't pick where he came from and where did he go, but his presence was caught on the camera, and it still haunts the employees who work there, especially on the night shifts. Over the last 5 years, I've been working at different odd jobs all around the country. I live in a small van, so it's convenient for me to move around a lot. But a few months back, I had to stay in an area for an extended amount of time to rack up some cash before moving on. At this time, I had taken up a job at a gas station. It was located on a road that was only used by locals to go in and out of the state without having to deal with highway traffic. There was nothing else on this route. It was simply a road with a lone gas station for the occasional driver to fill up at. That's kind of why it was perfect for me though, because the location didn't matter since I lived in a van. I could easily stay out there for an extended amount of time and work. Anyway, I'd been there for a bit over a month, and up to this point, I was still working random shifts. That day, I was working from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. It was not a special night by any means. No customers aside from a few stopping by the pumps and not much to do as far as stocking or anything. I was mostly standing around on my phone or pacing around the store and making the shelves look nice. Then at 1 a.m., a customer pulled into the station, parking in one of the few spaces right in front of the door. Knowing they must be coming inside, I went back to the counter. A man got out and came into the shop, looking over and smiling at me, then giving me a nod as he turned down one of the aisles. He started whistling as he looked at a couple of things, picking them up and putting them back, then continuing down the aisle and repeating this. I wasn't sure if he was just taking a break from driving, or if he needed something, but the items he was picking up and looking at were all different, and he didn't seem interested in buying them. Then he abruptly stopped whistling, walked over to the door, and left. I didn't think he stole anything, but it was strange. He got into his car and started moving around, reaching into his back seat before getting back out of his car and coming into the shop again. After seeing that, I wasn't feeling too comfortable. This seemed almost exactly how I thought an armed robbery would begin. But the aggression I was expecting when he came back in didn't happen. He walked over to the counter and asked how my night was starting, a quick back and forth of small talk. I acted as normal as I could, just in case I was overthinking everything. But then he asked if I could help him with his car. He said his tires needed air and that he didn't see any pumps outside. This station didn't have any air pumps for self-use, but we did carry a handheld air compressor for emergencies. I got it out and followed him to his car. He pointed down at the tire that needed it, and I ducked down, putting the compressor line in. I had it in for less than 10 seconds before it read the pressure to be at the right level. I looked over at the man, seeing him looking down at me with no expression. I took everything out and stood up, starting to walk back to the shop, when he stopped me by rushing in front of the door. His right hand was deep inside his jacket pocket as he stared at me with a cold face. I told him to move, but of course, he stayed in front of the door, though I could see in his eyes that he was preparing to do something. I took a step back, trying to say what I could calm the intensity of the situation, but just as I thought he was going to snap, he suddenly ran around me and got in his car, pulling out aggressively and speeding away. I took this time to go inside and call 911, and surprisingly, they arrived only minutes later. They were already on the chase, looking for the exact car the man was driving. The officer stated the man was on the run from a recently committed crime near the border. They didn't give me any details, but the way they said it made me think it wasn't just some small robbery. After my quick statement, they got on the road again. And after that, I never got an update. I tried to look up recent crimes and everything, but could not find anything useful. I don't know what he was planning to do or why he stopped at the station, but my best guess could have been to steal my van and conceal his tracks, or at least delay them. However, depending on what crime he had just committed, I think my life could have easily been at risk, and why he chose not to do anything to me is unknown.